to buy or sell something. For example, if you are buying a call option which gives the right to buy 100 shares of Reliance Industries Limited on or before 25/10/2021 at an exercise price of 1,200 rupees, to buy this call option you have to pay option premium, and what is described is the financial option. That is, the idea behind real options is similar to the option valuation. For example, a particular plot of land which could be used for building apartments or a shopping complex. The construction can be done now or in future, and the developer would like to develop the property now or in future so that the present value of the difference between benefits and costs are maximized. The best possible current use of land can be established easily, while its best possible future use may not be known. So the standard DCF valuation, which involves two steps, that is estimation of expected future cash flows and discounting of these cash flows at an appropriate cost of capital. There are problems in applying this approach to option valuation. While it is difficult to estimate expected cash flows, though it is possible, but to determine the opportunity cost of capital, because the risk of an option is virtually indeterminate as it changes every time the stock prices varies. So to value a call option, a portfolio has to be set up which imitates the call option in its payoff. The cost of such a portfolio, which is readily observed, must represent the value of the call option. So this is the call option based valuation, and I discussed in week 4 while discussing the applicability of DCF approach, the applicability and limitations of DCF approach, so that some assets cannot be valued using DCF approach, and the most suitable value of valuation here is the option approach. That is, the call option based approach is the most suitable valuation approach. So now coming to the relative valuation and the steps that are involved in relative valuation. What is relative valuation has to be understood first. Again, in DCF valuation, an asset is valued on the basis of its cash flow, growth, and risk characteristics. In relative valuation, an asset is valued on the basis of how similar assets are currently priced in the market. That is, the common sense and economic logic tells the similar asset should sell at similar prices. Based on this principle, one can value an asset by looking at the price at which reasonably informed seller and the reasonably informed buyer will change hands between them with the comparable asset. For example, if you want to sell your flat, you can estimate its appropriate selling price by looking at the market comparables. Suppose your flat measures 2000 square feet and recently a flat in the neighborhood measures 1500 square feet, which is sold for 45 lakh rupees at the rate of 3000 per square feet. You can put a value of 2000 into 3000, that is 60 lakh for your flat, as your flat measures 2000 square feet. So that is what is called as relative valuation. That is, selling at a price or valuing at a price at which a comparable asset has changed the hands between a reasonably informed buyer and a reasonably informed seller. Relative valuation is often considered as a substitute for DCF valuation, but the DCF approach provides the conceptual foundation for most relative valuation metrics. As this as a reason, we could see these two valuations as the complementary approaches to valuation. So we also will discuss the steps that are involved in relative valuation. That is, we will be analyzing the company which is subject to valuation, and to begin with, an in-depth analysis of the competitive and financial position of the subject company has to be conducted. So, while conducting an in-depth analysis of the subject company or the company under valuation, some of the aspects to be covered are the product portfolio and market segments that is been covered by the firm had to be studied. Also, to conduct an analysis with respect to the availability and the cost of inputs, then conduct technological and production capability studies, conduct and analyze a study with respect to market image, distribution reach, and customer loyalty, to find out the different products that is being offered by the company, that is offered by the comparable companies, and the economic cost position, the competency of the management, and what drives the competency of the management of the comparable companies, and the quality of human resources, the competition of the comparable companies, and that is at in what place the competitors are placed in the market, to analyze about the liquidity, leverage, and access to funds, that is, which are the different sources of funds the comparable companies have been using as their fund sources, and the turnover margins and return on investment of the comparable companies. Once the analysis with respect to these aspects has been conducted, then the next step is to select the comparable companies. That is, after the subject company is studied, the next step is to select companies which are similar to the subject companies in terms of the lines of business, nature of market served, scale of operation, and so on. Often it is hard to find truly comparable companies because firms are engaged in a variety of businesses. Firms serve different market segments and they are having varying capacities in terms of running the business operations. Hence, in practice, the analyst has to do with companies that are comparable in some ways. An analyst has to make an effort to look carefully at 10 to 15 companies in the same industry and select at least 3 to 4 which come as close as possible to the subject company. And also, a good deal of subjective judgment is involved in this process. So once the comparable companies have been selected, then the next is to choose the valuation multiples. There are a number of valuation multiples that are used in practice, which are divided into two broad categories, that is the equity valuation multiples and the enterprise valuation multiples. Some of the ratios that are considered under equity valuation multiples are price to earnings ratio, price to book value ratio, price to sales ratio, and under enterprise valuation multiples, the ratios that are commonly considered are EV to EBITDA ratio, EV to free cash flow to the firm ratio, EV to book value ratio, and EV to sales ratio. And it is also to be taken care which multiples choose suits what kind of companies, because none of the valuation multiples is perfect and It makes sense to use 2 or 3 multiples which seem appropriate for the task on hand. Generally, the valuation multiples used in enterprise valuation are EV to EBITDA ratio, EV to book value ratio, and EV to sales ratio. Once the choice of valuation multiples is over, then the next step is to calculate the valuation multiples for the comparable companies. That is, based on observed financial attributes and values of the comparable companies, we have to calculate the valuation multiples for the comparable companies. So, for example, if the valuation multiples of two companies P and Q are given, and also the sales, EBITDA, book value of assets, and the enterprise value is given to two companies, that is P and Q, we have to find out the average of the valuation multiples of the two companies after arriving at EV to EBITDA ratio, EV to book value ratio, and EV to sales ratio. Once the comparable companies' multiples have been averaged, then we have to value the subject company, that is the company under valuation. A simple way to do is to apply the average multiples of the comparable companies to the relevant financial attributes of the subject company and obtain several estimates, that is, as many as number of multiples that is used, of the enterprise value for the subject company and taking the arithmetic average of these multiples. The more sophisticated way to do is to look at how the growth rate, risk characteristics, and size of the subject company compare with those of comparable companies, and then arrive at a judgmental view of the multiples applicable to it. So I will be explaining the valuation of the subject company by taking an example of how the comparables are valued, what are the comparables, sales, EBITDA, book value, and enterprise values, and applying the average multiple to the financial numbers of the subject company, and hence arriving at the valuation of the firm by taking the simple average of the estimates, that is the three estimates of the enterprise value, which gives the value of the subject company under consideration. So I also will be discussing about the equity valuation multiples, what are the reasons why each multiple is used, what are its advantages and disadvantages. So the commonly used equity valuation multiples are the price earnings ratio, that is PE multiple, price to book value ratio, which we call commonly as PB multiple, and price to sales ratio, that is PS multiple. PE multiple is considered as the most popular valuation measure today. So the widely used valuation ratio is defined, that is the PE multiple is the widely used valuation ratio, and it is defined as market price per share to earnings per share. From the fundamental determinants from the fundamental point of view, price to earnings ratio is written as P0 by E1 is equal to 1 minus B by R minus ROE into B, where ROE is the fundamental determinant of this ratio. 1 minus B is the dividend payout ratio, R is the cost of equity, ROE is the return on equity, and B the flowback ratio. So the reasons why PE multiple is used popularly is The earning power is a major driver of investment value and hence earning per share looms large in security valuation. A survey conducted by AIMR members also found that earnings ranked first among four variables: earnings, cash flow, book value, and dividend as an input in equity valuation. Also, empirical research suggests that low PE stocks tend to outperform in the market. At the same time, there are drawbacks of using PE ratio, which arises from the characteristics of the EPS. That is, when EPS is negative, PE will not make any sense. That is, and the maintainable components of earnings are really important in determining intrinsic value. When we find earnings volatile, non-recurring components, the task of the analyst becomes difficult. And within the framework of acceptable accounting practices, management has some discretion to manipulate EPS. And such manipulations can change the comparability of PEs across companies. PB multiple, this also used in the same manner as PE multiple is used for a long time by investment analysts. So the book value per share is defined as the difference in shareholders' funds and preference capital to the number of outstanding equity shares, and from the fundamental point of view, PP multiple is defined as P0 by B0 is equal to ROE into 1 plus G into 1 minus B by R minus G, where ROE is the return on equity, G is the growth rate, 1 minus P is the dividend payout ratio, or the rate of return that is required by the investors. So there are several reasons why PB multiple has gained its popularity. The number one, because book value is a stock figure, it is generally positive even when EPS is negative. Compared to EPS, book value per share is more stable. When EPS is usually high or low or even volatile, PB multiple will be more meaningful than the PE multiple. Empirical research also suggests that difference in PB multiple are related to difference in long-term average returns. These are some of the advantages of using PB multiple over PE multiple, but this also suffers from some drawbacks like intangible assets like human capital and brand equity are not reflected in the conventional balance sheet. Inflation and technological changes drive a wedge between the book value and the market value of an asset. Different business models may require different levels of assets. When such differences are significant, PB multiple will be misleading. To overcome the disadvantages or drawbacks of PE and PB multiples, one more multiple, that is PS multiple, has received lot of attention in recent years as a valuation tool. PS multiple is calculated by dividing a company's current stock price by its revenue per share for the most recent 12 months. Alternatively, it can also be calculated by dividing the current market value of equity capital by annual sales of the firm. PS multiple reflects what the market is willing to pay per sales of the firm. So, from the fundamental point of view, PS multiple is defined as P0 by S0 is equal to NPM into 1 plus G into 1 minus B by R minus G. Since the net profit margin is the key driver of PS multiple, it makes sense to look at PS multiple as net profit margin. Also, a company's PS multiple has to be compared with that of the industry average, as PS multiple is a technique of relative valuation. Analysts find it suitable to use PS multiple because compared to EPS and book value, sales are generally less amenable to manipulation. While EPS or even book value may be negative, sales are always positive. So the PS ratio can be used even when EPS is negative. Also, sales are more stable than EPS, which is affected by operating and financial leverage. Hence, PS multiple is typically more stable compared to the PE multiple, and hence it is suggested to use the PS multiple over PE multiple and PE multiple. We also will discuss about the companion variables and modified variables as when we look at the equations of PE, PB and PS multiples, we find that there is one variable that is dominating when it comes to explaining each multiple. That is, in PE multiple, G, in PB multiple, ROE, and in PS multiple, it is NPM, that is net profit margin. And these variables, which are called as the dominant explanatory variables, are called companion variables. Taking into account the importance of companion variable, the analysts often use modified multiples which are defined as PE to growth multiple, which is referred to as PEG, PB to ROE multiple, which is referred to as value ratio, and PS to NPM multiple, which is referred to as PSM. Among these three modified multipliers, the PEG multiple is a favorite multiple of the financial analysts, and it suggests that a PEG multiple less than 1, the stock is undervalued, and a PEG multiple of more than 1, the stock is overvalued. We also will discuss the enterprise valuation multiples, and the most common enterprise valuation multiples that is being in use are EV to EBITDA multiple, EV to EBIT multiple, EV to free cash flow to the firm, EV to book value multiple, and EV to sales multiple. Enterprise value is defined as the sum of value of the firm's equity and interest-bearing debt. Put differently, EV is firm value, that is value of equity plus interest-bearing debt. The market value of equity is simply the number of outstanding equity shares times the price per share. And as far as the interest-bearing debt is concerned, if it is in the form of traded debt securities, its market value can be observed. If interest-bearing debt is in the form of loans, its market value has to be imputed. It is deemed that a rupee of loan will have a rupee of market value. So from the fundamental point of view, EV to EBITDA is defined as ROIC minus G by ROIC into WACC minus G into 1 minus DA into 1 minus D, where ROIC is the return on invested capital, G is the growth rate, DA is the depreciation and amortization charges as a percent of EBITDA, T the tax rate, and WACC the weighted average cost of capital. Although EBITDA is an unreliable proxy to free cash flow to the firm, EBITDA multiples are more commonly used. The reason is EBITDA provides a fairly good measure of pre-tax cash flows produced by the existing assets of the firm. So, when the most of the value of the firm comes from existing assets, EBITDA multiples make a lot of sense. Second, EBITDA is much more stable than compared to free cash flow to the firm. That is, free cash flow to the firm is highly volatile and is also likely to be negative when the firm is growing rapidly. And also we will discuss about EV to EBIT multiple, which is defined as enterprise value to earnings before interest and taxes. And from the fundamental point of view, it is defined as EV naught by EBIT is equal to 1 minus T into 1 minus reinvestment rate by WACC minus G, where T is the tax rate, WACC is the weighted average cost of capital, and G is the growth rate. So students, we will discuss in detail the equity valuation multiples and the enterprise valuation multiples in detail in the classes that will be held during week 5. Thank you all. Thank you so much.